Daisy.
And I'm Terri.
And this is the Monday Mindset Podcast,
where we share things of interest to us and hopefully to you.
So let's get started with episode number 188. And I was looking at I have my piece of paper calendar that I do. It's very old school. And we did actually have an episode out on the 1st of January. We should have had this one as the 1st of January, but wanted to wish everybody a very happy new year. We are actually recording this coming up towards the end of the year, but this will be hitting your web waves at the beginning of January. So yeah, we both wanted to wish you, didn't we, Terri, a very happy new year.
Absolutely. And you know, Daisy, both you and I have talked about this in previous years. We're not really big on the New Year's resolution type thing, but I do think it's really important for all of us at whatever level we do this to kind of do some reflecting and some thinking, setting intentions and things. So I've been looking forward to doing that with you today.
Yes, so that's what we thought we would do. We did mention it last time we were recording, but we said we would have a sort of reflecting back on 2023 episode. As I was making a few notes for this, I did just suddenly think we're going to be saying Happy New Year to people, but many cultures, of course, have a different New Year. And so I did a quick bit of Googling. The ones that I know more about, because of my stepmother is Thai. She's actually half Chinese. So I tend to know a little bit more about Chinese and Thai New Year's. Chinese New Year sort of around about that February time, and Thai New Year. And I think it varies because it's to do with, isn't it, the lunar charts or whatever, Chinese New Year. So it doesn't fall on the same day every year. Thai New Year is always on the same day, and that's April 13th. That's called Songkran, and it's the water festival. People throw water at each other, apparently. But I did do a quick Google and realised how inadequate my knowledge was about other cultures' New Years. But the Hebrew New Year, Rosh Hashanah, is in October in 2024, and the Islamic New Year, July 2024. And I think those, you might know more about those than I do, they're always that sort of time of year, I think.
I don't know for sure. It seems to me that they're not necessarily the same date, but
that sort of time of year.
Again, based on something in the calendar. So they might range from sometime in September into October. Kind of like even Hanukkah, you know, some years it's at the same time as Christmas is for other people, and sometimes it's done before Christmas even begins.
Yeah. And I suppose we can relate to cultures that you and I are more familiar with, how Easter varies every year, of course. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I think it might be fixed in America, but Mothering Sunday here is tied to Easter, so it varies every year. But yes, and there were many, many more. I could have gone Googling for ages and done a great long list, but there do seem to be those. We obviously have our New Year in January, but that sort of February and April, and then that sort of autumn time as well seem to be a lot of other cultures. That's when they have their New Year. So it's not everybody's New Year, but for those of you who is a New Year, Happy New Year. And so, yes, a quick roundup, reflect back on 2023. Here at my end, I've written just a few notes, a quick roundup of my year. I started off with, I said, well, I have done a shit ton of DIY this year. This 2023 has been the year of DIY here in St Leonard's on Sea. I have stripped, repaired and painted a lot of the render at the front of the house, which of course I didn't intend to do. I was just going to do the window frames. I've completed those 2 rooms finally downstairs so that I could get my stuff finally out of storage. It is all still sitting there. It hasn't been unpacked. Don't get too excited. The new windows have gone in, and the new front door with my fantastic stained glass masterpiece has finally gone in. So I also acquired a new skill via evening class this year and learned how to make stained glass panels.
And I can attest to the fact, obviously, I haven't seen it in person, but I have seen a photo. It is gorgeous, Daisy. Absolutely gorgeous.
It does look pretty good. I'm really pleased with it now, seeing it in place. It actually makes it, it's a hallway, it's one long hallway, but of course you have the light shining through. And once the surround is done, there's going to be a cupboard on one side, and it's got an exposed brick wall down one side, and the other, when the wall on the other side is done, it's this nice deep blue. But then of course you just get this window shining out at the end, and it's almost like you've hung a piece of art. It really changes that quite just a plain nothing hallway into something a little bit special. So yes, I'm really pleased with it. Very glad I did that. The other big things for me, the dog things, always important to me. Of course, I lost my wonderful Bets this year after many, many years together. But then towards the end of the year, of course, I welcomed a new dog, Lila, who has lots of issues, which you know all about. Of course, I am used to dealing with issues with dogs, with Rocket, and Amy less so. Rocket's had a lot of issues, but she has sort of issues at the other end of the spectrum. It's highly reactive, but she's great fun, and she's settling in. And I said to you just as before we started recording that I think she's actually looking at me as someone she quite likes now. We've gone beyond the "you're just the person that gives me food," and she hasn't got that look of love yet, but she's got the look of like.
2024 is going to be the year of love.
Yes.
For Lila.
I hope so. And hopefully, getting her into shape. But in some ways it's good. There's always not always, I suppose, but there's usually something good you can take out of something that feels challenging. And I felt very overwhelmed with her issues. She has reactivity issues. And so basically I can't walk her with the other dogs normally. How I started off, she seemed to be fine to start with. And I have to take her separately, or we can go to exclusive dog fields. But otherwise I have to take her separately and then take them. But she also has separation anxiety, so it's difficult to leave her. So it's quite complicated. But the positive that's come out of it, I've got a bit lazy with my dogs, lazy with the dog walking, just comfort zone. We go where we go, a local park, walking from the house, don't have to go in the car. But because of her problem, she reacts to traffic. I have to take her somewhere in the car, ironically, but in a covered crate. I have to get her somewhere where there isn't traffic. But what that's meant is that I've been pushed into exploring new places, finding places, scouring Google Maps for ages, finding places to go and walk, asking people where I might be able to go that doesn't have traffic and there aren't too many dogs. And so I've been finding some places and going to those. And so it's been quite fun, exploring new places and getting a bit more exercise because I tend to walk further. So there's been some good things to come out of it, even though it's been challenging. So the dogs and I, broadened our horizons. So I think it's going to be good for all of us. And the others have got to go to some more interesting and new and exciting places too. So there's always a silver lining.
Absolutely.
So before we go on to talk about the podcast, about your year, it's been quite a year of upheavals for you too.
Yeah, as you were talking, Daisy, I was trying to just really even think about 2023 for me. And I would say something that's kind of spanned the entire year is a move. Didn't actually move until August, but started planning a move in January because that's when we purchased the home. And then had some work done on it over the summer, which... if anyone has ever seen the movie The Money Pit, I feel like perhaps that's what we purchased. But we got here in August and have been doing a lot of repair type work, putting in new flooring, new paint, lots of things.
Lots of painting, yeah.
Yes.
Lots of DIY your end too.
Yeah. I have been less the DIYer and more the gopher helping the DIYer, but yeah, a lot of work has been done. The other piece for me about that move that's pretty significant is just a very different lifestyle. I was in a suburb in San Diego, maybe just outside of downtown, so a very walkable area. I could leave my apartment and go 1 block to Whole Foods and go, maybe 7 blocks and choose from 20 different restaurants and things to now suddenly.
I remember how pleased you were when you found that place that, it's only 1 block to Whole Foods.
Yeah, and 2 blocks to my favorite coffee place.
Yeah.
Now it is about 15 minutes. It's about 30 minutes to get to Whole Foods. It's not even anywhere near the town I live in, but so that's been, something getting used to. We live much more out in nature, so seeing elk in our yard, deer in our yard. We hear stories of a mountain lion in our neighborhood.
Wow, really?
And there are also bears here, obviously. We haven't seen those yet. We have seen a fox and so many more opportunities for outside activities, which leads to the other big event of my 2023 in that I got a new bike. And the day after procuring such bike, I fell off the bike and broke 3 ribs and my collarbone. So that took up a fair good chunk of the fall of 2023, recovering from that. And I'm still working on that recovery a bit in that my bone hasn't regenerated as well as the doctor was hoping. And so I got something called a bone stimulator. And it is a device that has an ultrasound little pad that you center over the spot. And I wear it for 20 minutes each day to stimulate bone growth. So I'm looking forward to feedback in the new year. So soon after this episode, I will get some feedback about how the bone growth is going at this point.
Yeah, which I suppose they can assess with an x-ray, can they?
Yes, they use an x-ray and they can see it on the x-ray. I can't see it on the x-ray, but they see this cloudiness, which represents the callus, the new bone.
Oh, right.
And, the PA was trying to show me, see all this? This is good. And I, of course, didn't see any of it. So, yes, great. And this also is leading me up to something that I hope becomes a pretty big part of 2024, and that is getting ready to get back out and learn some more skiing. I have not skied yet this year, even though we have had snow. Just giving my bone a little more time to heal, maybe psychologically, and giving myself some more time to feel prepared, but hoping to get out in January and learn more about skiing.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Because, you've had snow already, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
On your doorstep, not just at the ski place.
Yeah. We live down valley of the local resort, and actually we live near several different resorts, but probably about 40 minutes to any one of them. And we have had some snow. We have I'm looking out the window now, I can see my neighbors still have snow in their yard, but we have not had major snowfall. Where at the mountains, 40 minutes from us, they've had periods of 6 inches of snow or 17 inches of snow. So skiing has begun for sure.
And as far as the podcast goes, again in my notes, as for me, it was the year of the rant, it seems. I got ranty, just last week, talking about social media, divisiveness, especially from the media outlets with their manipulation and often outright false posts, I think anyway. But going back a bit in time, I shared Laura Bates's book, Everyday Sexism, and then also quite a few books about racism over the weeks. There were a couple of weeks. I think I had a wild card week where I'd forgotten to prepare something specific. So I just shared some books that I'd been reading. And there was Black and British by David Olusoga, which is a great book, but it's one of those, a bit like a school textbook. It's a sort of heavy, little bit dry, but very, very interesting. The Windrush Betrayal by Amelia Gentleman, which I found much more interesting. It's that where the thread through it has a story, you know, they tell it through a story, and they tell it through a story of people's lives. There was a series actually on TV recently, and I'm trying to think, well, I think it was called Three Little Birds, along similar lines. Lenny Henry, very famous comedian and writer, actor in the UK. I don't know if anyone watched it, but I very much enjoyed that. And then I suppose my really worthy, what felt, when you read different books, and we both get through a lot of fiction, crime fiction and different things like that, but sometimes you read things that feel like a real more hefty, worthy read, and I think my book of the year would have to be The Good Ally by Nova Reid, and I did do an episode about that, sharing about that, and I haven't gone back to re-listen to it yet, but that reminded me that that's on my card to do that. And then the other thing, of course, that kind of threads through all of those things, but threads through any big topic. I think I did 3 or 4 episodes talking about Monica Guzman's book, How to Talk to Each Other in Divided Times. And that's where we got our SOSing from, that we referred to a lot. Her SOSing, sorting, othering, and siloing. It's her book, but she was talking about that on a podcast over various episodes. And I stayed with that for 3 or 4 of our episodes because I found it really, really interesting. It's something that we've come back to and we've referred to a lot, haven't we? Especially when you're talking about anything that has the potential to be divisive. And there seems to be so much of that around now, politics, Brexit, Trump, you name it. Sexism, trans rights, racism. There's so much about, and on social media, things that come up to the surface and get my goat and get me a bit ranty. But yes, so for me, I felt it's been a little bit year of the rant, but there seems to have been quite a lot to rant about. You're much more the calming voice that comes to this podcast.
I just choose less actively debated topics. Like, let's talk about oral health. Not a lot there that could be too controversial. I was just looking back over, and interestingly, when I go into the podcast app that I use, it does not show these in order, so I couldn't just look back over what have we talked about this year. I will admit, Daisy, that I often choose topics that I think are going to serve kind of dual purposes. Things that our listeners might be interested in, but also something that will help me in my work at the fasting method. So I do tend to choose things that are about self-sabotage, changing our brain, motivation, all of those kinds of things. Like I said, for me, it just kind of helps me killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Pardon that reference, but it does help me to kind of get 2 uses out of much of what we talk about. So I am a bit biased when I choose my topics for this.
But that's also, of course, where it stems back. The origin of this podcast, where it came from, was just things that we shared with each other, things that we listened to that we find interesting that we would then chat to each other about. And so it's things that we are listening to. And of course, the majority of the podcasts you're listening to are those kind of things, because they're the kind of things that you're interested in, but they're also the kind of things that you're actively always doing that sort of research to bring to the people that you work with. So I think it's natural that we have a lot of overlap with the things that we listen to. And this is why we started this podcast, because we're interested in hearing about the things that the other has listened to. So there's a lot of overlap, but we also listen to different things.
As you were mentioning some of the books that you've talked about this year, I'm thinking I have some in my queue right now that I hope to talk about some this current year in 2024, because I haven't discussed many books in 2023. But again, they're often about the brain, motivation, and things. There's a book called Chatter, which I learned about from one of the other episodes I did cover this past year. A client told me about a book that she really found useful, The Willpower Instinct by one of your favorites, Kelly McGonigal. The Wisdom of Your Body, The Mountain is You, The Worthy Mind. So all of these, again, motivation, mind, self-sabotage, I'm hoping to share some of those as I get into them in this coming year.
You've also promised us an episode all about finding out more about neurobics.
Yes.
So I was very interested in.
Yes.
I did actually find, it was from something like Age UK actually, which kind of makes sense. Mm-hmm. They gave some basic things and it was very interesting. So I look forward to hearing more about that.
We will definitely work on some neurobics together. Not aerobics.
And I have been, not every day, but I have been trying the old cleaning your teeth with your left hand, if that's assuming you're right-handed, of course, vice versa, if you're left-handed. And yes, it's surprisingly challenging, but actually you can see your brain learning to do it. You get better every time you do it. But yes, you can feel the challenge.
Which also supports the whole concept of habits.
Exactly.
Habits are those things that we do repeatedly. So if you use your non-dominant hand repeatedly, it becomes the habit.
The only other thing I wrote a note for, and then I forgot to go and look up. I'm pretty sure we discussed this. Gretchen Rubin, and I think other people do this, but I think it's a big thing with Gretchen Rubin when she does the podcast with her sister, and they pick a word for the year. And I think we did mention this last year, but I can't for the life of me remember which word that I selected for 2023. It should have been DIY.
That's either not a word or it's multiple words. I don't think you can choose that. Maybe grit fits your 2023.
Yes, that probably would be quite a good one. Yes. I don't know if this is something you do or if you would have put any thought into what your word might be for 2024.
This one might sound weird, but I think for me, my word for 2024 would be deepening. And by that, really focusing on some personal development that I want to work on, deepening connections with people, deepening my commitment to my own habits and health and things like that, deepening my connection with nature here now that I have so many opportunities. Yeah, so I think that's my word for 2024. I don't need a whole bunch of brand new things, but I want to deepen these connections and these kind of intentions and the focus for me.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good one.
How about you, Daisy?
Well, I think along those lines of something that I just mentioned, actually, and I don't know what word I would put on it. Maybe adventurous, being a bit more adventurous. And that's probably not as exciting as some people would think of when they think of that word, but really just pushing myself and sometimes my dogs as well, just outside of my comfort zone. I'm a bit too good at liking what I like and what I'm used to and my comfort zone. And so I think this new challenge, this set of challenges with Lila has taught me that actually being forced to just start pushing outside that comfort zone can bring quite a few benefits. And so I think I've always known, I suppose, that that's something I need to do more of. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe that's something, as I've already sort of tested the waters and seen some benefits from it already towards the end of 23, I think I might hone in on that a bit more and just, tentatively try and push a few more directions out of the many comfort zones that I've set up for myself.
I like it.
So adventure, I guess, would be my word for 2024.
Yeah, I think of that too. before you asked me, I was kind of tossing around, and so it's interesting that I think they're kind of similar, but I was thinking another one for me is expansion. Ways to expand on experiences in my life. Again, going back to deepening, but expanding relationships, expanding my stamina and ability to do certain things, my kind of experience base, expanding that. So I love that. Challenging yourself to do some more adventuring, trying new things, expanding. It's really a cool way to think of growth for the new year.
Yes, I think I accidentally did it a couple of times. I'm just thinking back, I've just remembered about the evening class, of course, and the stained glass window. So, just challenging myself to do a few new things and just, get out of the ruts that I like to get into and I feel too comfortable in. But actually the benefits can be had from stepping outside of those. So I will try and do more of that in 2024.
And we should check in at the end of 2024 to see how we've done with these. So
definitely
see what I have been able to deepen and what adventures you have taken on in this new year. Very exciting to reflect on that in the coming year.
Wonderful. So we will be back next week with something from you. It'll be your turn next week.
Maybe neurobics.
Maybe. Be a good way to start the year. Until then, I hope you have a very wonderful week.
Take good care, everyone.